The world we live in today is filled with division. People are separated by beliefs, cultures, opinions, and past wounds. Everywhere we look, there is conflict between nations, communities, families, and even within our own hearts. Yet more than 2,000 years ago, a man named Jesus Christ spoke words so radical, so powerful, that they continue to challenge humanity even today. He said, "Love your enemies, not tolerate them, not ignore them, but love them." At first glance, this teaching seems almost impossible. How can we love those who hurt us? How can we show kindness to those who betray us, insult us, or stand against us? Our natural instinct is to protect ourselves, to respond with anger, or to seek justice. But the message of love that Jesus taught goes far beyond human instinct. It reaches into the divine nature of compassion, mercy, and forgiveness. To understand this teaching, we must first understand what love truly means. Love in this context is not merely an emotion or a feeling. It is a choice. It is an action. It is the decision to treat others with kindness, respect, and compassion, regardless of how they treat us. It is a reflection of strength, not weakness. When Jesus spoke about loving enemies, he was addressing a deep-rooted cycle that has existed throughout human history, the cycle of hatred and revenge. One person harms another, and in return, the other seeks to harm back. This continues endlessly, creating a chain of pain that spreads across generations. But love has the power to break this cycle. Love interrupts hatred. Love disarms anger. Love heals what revenge only deepens. Imagine a world where people chose love instead of retaliation, where forgiveness replaced grudges, where understanding replaced judgment. This is the vision that Jesus presented, a kingdom not built on power or control, but on love. But loving enemies does not mean allowing injustice or accepting harmful behavior. It does not mean staying silent in the face of wrongdoing. Instead, it means responding to negativity with a higher level of consciousness. It means choosing peace over chaos, even when it is difficult. It means standing firm in truth, but without hatred in the heart. One of the greatest examples of this teaching can be seen in the life of Jesus himself. Throughout his life, he faced rejection, criticism, and persecution. People mocked him, doubted him, and eventually they crucified him. Yet even in his final moments, he chose love. He prayed for those who harmed him, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." This was not just a statement. It was the ultimate demonstration of unconditional love. This kind of love requires inner transformation. It requires us to rise above our ego, our pride, and our desire for revenge. It asks us to see others not as enemies, but as human beings flawed, broken, and in need of understanding, just like ourselves. This kind of love requires inner transformation. It requires us to rise above our ego, our pride, and our desire for revenge. It asks us to see others not as enemies, but as human beings flawed, broken, and in need of understanding, just like ourselves. Think about someone in your life who has hurt you. Perhaps it is a friend who betrayed your trust, a family member who misunderstood you, or someone who spoke harsh words that left a lasting wound. Holding on to that pain may feel justified, but over time, it becomes a burden. It weighs down your heart. It limits your peace. Now imagine choosing to let go of that burden, not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. This is where the true power of love begins, not in changing others, but in freeing yourself. Loving your enemies is not about them, it is about you. It is about who you choose to become. Do you allow hatred to shape your character, or do you choose love as your guiding force? In many ways, love is the greatest act of courage. It is easy to hate. It is easy to respond with anger, but it takes strength to remain calm in the face of hostility. It takes wisdom to respond with kindness when confronted with cruelty. This teaching is not meant to be easy. It is meant to transform. It challenges us to grow beyond our limitations and to reflect a higher purpose. It invites us to become instruments of peace in a world that desperately needs it. As we continue this journey, we will explore what it truly means to love unconditionally. We will look at real-life examples, powerful lessons, and practical ways to apply this teaching in everyday life. Because love is not just an idea, it is a practice. And when practiced consistently, it has the power to change everything. As we go deeper into the message of loving everyone, even those who oppose us, we begin to realize that this teaching is not just spiritual, but deeply psychological. The human mind is wired to remember pain more strongly than kindness. When someone hurts us, our brain holds on to that moment, replaying it again and again. This creates a loop of resentment, where the pain continues long after the event has passed. But the teaching of Jesus Christ invites us to break that loop. Resentment is like carrying a heavy weight on your shoulders. At first it may feel justified, even necessary. You may believe that holding on to anger protects you or gives you a sense of control. But over time it drains your energy, affects your mental peace, and even impacts your physical health. Studies in psychology have shown that prolonged anger and bitterness can lead to stress, anxiety, and even illness. In contrast, forgiveness and compassion have been linked to emotional healing and inner peace. But here lies the challenge. How do you forgive someone who has deeply hurt you? How do you show love when your heart feels broken? The answer does not come overnight. It is a process. It begins with a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing your enemy as purely negative, try to understand their story. Every person carries their own struggles, their own wounds, their own battles. Sometimes people hurt others because they themselves are hurting. This does not excuse their actions, but it helps you see them with empathy rather than hatred. Empathy is one of the most powerful tools in practicing love. It allows you to step into someone else's shoes, even if only for a moment. It softens your heart. It opens the door to understanding. And understanding is the first step toward forgiveness. Another important aspect of loving your enemies is learning to control your reactions. You cannot always control what others do, but you can control how you respond. When someone speaks harshly to you, your immediate reaction may be to respond with equal or greater intensity. But what happens when you choose a different response? What happens when you remain calm, when you speak with kindness, or when you simply choose silence? This kind of response is not weakness, it is mastery. It shows that you are not controlled by external circumstances, but guided by inner strength. Consider a moment when someone insulted you. If you responded with anger, the situation likely escalated. But if you responded with calmness, it may have diffused the tension. This is the power of choosing love over reaction. There is also a deeper level to this teaching, the idea of unconditional love. Most of us are used to conditional love. We love those who treat us well. We care for those who care for us. But loving your enemies means extending that love beyond conditions. It means choosing love even when it is not returned. This does not mean you become vulnerable to harm or allow others to take advantage of you. Boundaries are still important. You can love someone from a distance. You can forgive someone without allowing them back into your life. Love, in this sense, is about your intention, not necessarily your proximity. One of the most powerful transformations happens when you stop seeing people as enemies altogether. Labels create separation. When you label someone as an enemy, you place them in a category that justifies your negative feelings toward them. But when you remove that label, you begin to see them as human just like you. This shift in perception can change everything. It allows you to approach situations with curiosity instead of judgment. It opens the possibility for healing, both within yourself and in your relationships. There are countless real-life examples of people who have practiced this kind of love. Individuals who have forgiven those who caused them unimaginable pain. People who chose compassion in the face of hatred. These stories remind us that this teaching is not just theoretical, it is possible. But it requires commitment. It requires daily practice. It requires you to be mindful of your thoughts, your words, and your actions. One practical way to begin is through small acts of kindness. Start with simple things, smiling at someone who seems distant, speaking kindly to someone who is rude, offering help without expecting anything in return. These small actions may seem insignificant, but they create a ripple effect. Another powerful practice is letting go of negative thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking negatively about someone, pause and redirect your thoughts. Replace judgment with understanding. Replace anger with compassion. Over time, this rewires your mindset. Prayer or meditation can also play a key role. Taking a moment each day to reflect, to release negativity, and to cultivate love within yourself can strengthen your ability to live out this teaching. When your inner world is filled with peace, it naturally reflects in your outer world. Loving your enemies is not about changing them, it is about transforming yourself. It is about rising above the limitations of human instinct and stepping into a higher way of living. As we continue this journey, we will explore even deeper layers of this teaching. We will look at how love can transform relationships, communities, and even entire societies. Because when one person chooses love, it creates a ripple. And when many people choose love, it creates a movement. As we continue exploring the profound teaching of loving everyone, even those who oppose us, we now step into one of the most challenging yet transformative aspects of this message: forgiveness. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many people believe it means forgetting the pain, excusing the wrongdoing, or pretending that nothing ever happened. But true forgiveness is something much deeper. It is not about denying the past. It is about releasing its control over your present. The teachings of Jesus Christ emphasize forgiveness as a path to freedom. Not freedom for the person who caused harm, but freedom for the one who carries the pain. When you hold on to anger, you remain tied to the moment of hurt. It becomes a chain that binds your thoughts, your emotions, and your peace. Forgiveness is the act of breaking that chain. But let's be honest, this is not easy. Some wounds run deep. Some betrayals leave scars that take years to heal. In such moments, the idea of loving your enemy may feel impossible. And that's okay. This journey is not about perfection, it is about progress. Forgiveness begins with a decision, not a feeling, but a conscious choice. You may not feel ready to forgive, but you can choose to begin the process. You can choose to say, I am willing to let go of this pain, even if it takes time. That willingness is the first step toward healing. One powerful truth to understand is that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. You do not have to restore a relationship with someone who has harmed you, especially if they continue to cause harm. You can forgive from a distance. You can release the bitterness without reopening the door to pain. This is where wisdom and self-respect come into play. Another important element in this journey is self-reflection. Sometimes when we are hurt, we focus entirely on the other person's actions. But healing often requires us to look within, not to blame ourselves, but to understand our own emotions. Why did this hurt so deeply? What part of me is affected? What can I learn from this experience? These questions are not easy, but they lead to growth. They help you become more aware of your inner world. And awareness is the foundation of transformation. There is also a powerful connection between forgiveness and humility. When we acknowledge that we, too, are imperfect, that we have made mistakes, hurt others, or acted out of anger, it becomes easier to extend grace to others. This does not minimize their actions, but it reminds us of our shared humanity. Think about a time when you were forgiven. Perhaps you made a mistake, said something you regret, or acted in a way that hurt someone else. And yet, someone chose to forgive you. That moment likely brought relief, gratitude, and a sense of peace. Now imagine offering that same gift to someone else. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It is often a repeated practice. There may be days when the pain resurfaces, when old memories come back, when emotions feel just as strong as before. In those moments, you may need to forgive again and again. Each time, the hold of the past becomes weaker. Another powerful aspect of loving your enemies is learning to respond with grace in difficult situations. Grace is the ability to remain kind and composed, even when faced with negativity. It is the quiet strength that refuses to be pulled into conflict. Imagine someone speaking harshly to you. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You take a breath. You choose your response carefully. You speak calmly, or you choose silence. In that moment, you break the cycle. You refuse to let negativity dictate your actions. This kind of response requires practice. It requires mindfulness. It requires you to be present in the moment, aware of your thoughts and emotions. But with time, it becomes a natural part of who you are. There is also a deeper spiritual dimension to this teaching. Loving your enemies connects you to a higher purpose. It aligns you with values that go beyond personal gain or emotional reaction. It places you on a path of growth, compassion, and inner peace. Throughout history, there have been individuals who embodied this message in extraordinary ways. One of the most powerful examples is Mahatma Gandhi, who chose nonviolence in the face of oppression. His approach was rooted in love, truth, and the belief that hatred could not drive out hatred. Another remarkable example is Martin Luther King, Jr., who spoke about love as the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Despite facing immense hostility and injustice, he remained committed to peace and compassion. These individuals remind us that loving your enemies is not just a personal practice. It has the power to change societies. It can break cycles of violence, heal divisions, and create lasting change. But change always begins within. It begins with one person making a different choice. One person choosing love instead of hate. One person choosing forgiveness instead of resentment. As you listen to these words, consider your own life. Is there someone you need to forgive? Is there a situation where you can choose a different response? Is there an opportunity to practice love where you once held anger? You do not have to have all the answers. You do not have to be perfect. All that is required is a willingness to grow. Because in the end, loving your enemies is not about them. It is about who you are becoming. It is about stepping into a higher version of yourself. A version that is not defined by pain, but by love. As we move further into this journey, we now begin to see how the principle of loving your enemies moves beyond personal growth and starts transforming real lives in powerful, visible ways. It is one thing to understand love as an idea, and another to live it in the middle of pain, conflict, and human struggle. This is where the message taught by Jesus Christ becomes truly alive, not in theory, but in action. Across the world, there are countless stories of ordinary people who faced extraordinary pain, yet chose love instead of hatred. These are not perfect individuals. They are people who experienced betrayal, loss, injustice, and suffering, yet made a decision that changed everything. Consider the story of a man who lost a loved one due to violence. The natural response in such a situation is anger, a desire for justice, even revenge. For months his heart was filled with grief and rage. Every thought led back to the same question, why? But over time he realized that his anger was not bringing healing. It was only deepening his pain. One day he made a choice that seemed impossible. He decided to forgive, not because the act committed against him was acceptable, but because he no longer wanted to be controlled by hatred. He chose to see the person responsible not just as an enemy, but as a broken human being who had made a terrible decision. That choice did not erase the past, but it changed his future. He found peace where there was once only pain. Stories like this are powerful because they show that love is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. Another example can be seen in communities that were once divided by conflict. Groups of people who carried generations of hatred toward one another began to take small steps toward reconciliation. It started with conversations uncomfortable, emotional, and often painful conversations. But through these dialogues, something shifted. People began to see each other not as enemies, but as individuals with stories, families, and dreams. This transformation did not happen overnight. It required patience. It required courage. But most importantly, It required a willingness to let go of the past and build something new. The teachings of Martin Luther King, Jr. remind us that darkness cannot drive out. Darkness only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out. Hate only love can do that. These words are not just inspirational, they are deeply practical. They offer a solution to one of humanity's greatest challenges. When we respond to hate with hate, we multiply it. When we respond with love, we begin to dissolve it. But let's be clear, this path is not easy. There will be moments when your emotions rise, when old wounds reopen, when anger feels justified. In those moments, loving your enemy may feel like the hardest thing in the world. And yet, it is in those very moments that the choice matters most. One powerful way to practice this is through intentional kindness. Not random kindness, but deliberate acts of goodwill toward those you struggle with. It could be a kind word, a gesture of respect, or even choosing not to speak negatively about them. These actions may seem small, but they carry immense power. Another important step is learning to release the need for control. Often we want others to change, to apologize, to acknowledge their mistakes. But when that doesn't happen, frustration grows. Loving your enemies means letting go of that expectation. It means accepting that you cannot control others. You can only control yourself. This shift brings freedom. It allows you to focus on your own growth instead of waiting for someone else to change. There is also a deep emotional healing that takes place when you choose love. Anger and resentment create tension within the body and mind. They keep you in a state of stress. But love and forgiveness create space. They bring calmness. They allow you to breathe again. Over time, this practice begins to change you from within. You become more patient, more understanding, more resilient. Situations that once triggered strong reactions no longer have the same power over you. You begin to see life differently. You start to realize that every person you meet is fighting their own battle. Some battles are visible, others are hidden, but everyone carries something. And when you approach others with this awareness, your heart naturally softens. This does not mean you agree with everything people do. It does not mean you ignore injustice, but it changes how you respond. It allows you to stand for what is right without being consumed by negativity. One of the most profound truths in this journey is that love has a ripple effect. When you choose love, it influences those around you. Your actions inspire others. Your calmness brings peace into tense situations. Your forgiveness opens the door for healing. And sometimes your choice to love an enemy can even transform that person. Not always, not immediately, but it creates the possibility, because love has a way of reaching places that anger never can. As we continue this journey, we will explore how to apply this teaching in everyday life within families, workplaces, friendships, and even within ourselves. Because sometimes the hardest person to love is not an external enemy, but the voice within that judges, criticizes, and doubts. The journey of love is not just outward, it is inward as well. And when both align, something powerful happens. You begin to live in a way that reflects peace, strength, and purpose. As we continue this journey, the message of loving everyone, even your enemies, now becomes deeply personal. It moves from stories and ideas into the reality of everyday life. because it is in daily interactions, small moments, and ordinary relationships where this teaching is truly tested and truly lived. The words of Jesus Christ were not meant only for extraordinary situations. They were meant for the way we speak, think, react, and treat others every single day. Think about your daily life. The people you interact with, family members, co-workers, neighbors, strangers. Not all conflicts come from major betrayals or deep wounds. Sometimes they come from misunderstandings, differences in opinion, or moments of frustration. A harsh word, a disagreement, a lack of appreciation, these small things can slowly build walls between people. And often, without realizing it, we begin to categorize people. This person is difficult. That person is rude. Another is unkind. Over time, these labels create distance. They shape how we treat others. They influence how we respond. But what happens when you choose to see these same people through a different lens? Instead of reacting to behavior, you begin to look beyond it. You ask yourself, what might this person be going through? What stress, pressure, or pain might be influencing their actions? This shift does not excuse negativity, but it changes your response to it. In families, this teaching becomes especially powerful. Family relationships can be filled with love, but also with tension. Old arguments, unspoken expectations, and emotional wounds can create distance even among those closest to us. Loving your enemies in this context may mean showing patience to a family member who constantly criticizes you. It may mean choosing understanding over argument or silence over escalation. In workplaces, the challenge takes a different form. You may encounter competition, jealousy, or unfair treatment. Someone may take credit for your work, speak negatively about you, or create obstacles in your path. In such situations, your instinct may be to retaliate or protect your reputation aggressively. But choosing love does not mean allowing injustice. It means responding with professionalism, integrity, and calmness. When you maintain your character in difficult situations, you stand out. You become someone who is not easily shaken. And over time, that strength earns respect. Friendships also test this teaching. Sometimes friends disappoint us. They may fail to support us, misunderstand us, or even betray our trust. These moments can be deeply painful because they come from people we care about. Loving your enemies in this situation may mean having the courage to forgive or the wisdom to let go without hatred. There is also a deeper layer to this teaching, learning to love yourself, because often the harshest enemy we face is within. The voice that criticizes, doubts, and reminds us of our past mistakes can be relentless. If you cannot show compassion to yourself, it becomes much harder to extend it to others. Self-love is not about arrogance or ignoring your flaws. It is about accepting your humanity. It is about recognizing that you are a work in progress, just like everyone else. When you begin to treat yourself with kindness, something shifts. You become less reactive, less defensive, more open, and this inner peace naturally extends outward. The teachings of Mahatma Gandhi remind us to be the change you wish to see in the world. This is not just a motivational phrase, it is a practical guide. If you want to see more kindness, practice kindness. If you want to see more understanding, practice understanding. Change does not begin with others, it begins with you. One powerful habit to develop is mindful communication. Before speaking, take a moment to consider your words. Are they helpful? Are they kind? Are they necessary? This simple pause can prevent many conflicts and create more meaningful interactions. Another important practice is gratitude. When you focus on what is good in your life, your perspective shifts. You become less focused on negativity and more aware of the positive aspects of your relationships. Even in difficult people, you may begin to notice small qualities worth appreciating. There is also strength in choosing when to walk away. Loving your enemies does not mean engaging in every conflict. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Sometimes it is creating distance. Sometimes it is choosing peace over being right. This requires wisdom, the ability to recognize what each situation needs. As you practice these principles, you may notice something surprising. Situations that once caused stress begin to feel different. People who once seemed difficult may no longer affect you in the same way. Your reactions become more balanced. Your mind becomes calmer. This is the transformation that love brings. It does not change the world overnight, but it changes your experience of the world immediately. And that change is powerful, because when you are no longer controlled by anger, resentment, or negativity, you become free. Free to choose your responses. Free to live with peace. Free to grow. As we move forward, we will explore even deeper emotional and spiritual dimensions of this teaching. We will look at how love can heal deep wounds, restore broken connections, and create a sense of purpose that goes beyond personal success. Because loving your enemies is not just a lesson, it is a way of life. As we move deeper into this journey, we now arrive at one of the most powerful outcomes of loving your enemy's inner healing. Beyond relationships, beyond conflict, beyond external situations, this teaching begins to transform something even more important, your inner world. The message of Jesus Christ was never just about changing behavior. It was about renewing the heart. Every human being carries emotional wounds. Some are recent, while others have been buried for years. These wounds may come from rejection, betrayal, loss, or harsh experiences that left a lasting impact. Often, we learn to live with these wounds rather than heal them. We distract ourselves, suppress our emotions, or build walls to protect ourselves from further pain. But unhealed pain does not disappear. It influences how we think, how we feel, and how we respond to others. It shapes our reactions. It creates triggers. It causes us to see situations through the lens of past hurt. This is where the practice of love becomes deeply transformative. When you choose to love even in difficult situations, you begin to confront the pain within you. You begin to notice your reactions, your emotions, your patterns, and instead of running from them, you start to understand them. Healing begins with awareness. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Are there situations where your reaction feels stronger than the moment itself? Are there people who trigger emotions that seem deeper than the situation requires? These are often signs of unresolved pain. Loving your enemies invites you to pause in those moments. Instead of reacting immediately, you observe. You ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Is this anger truly about this moment, or is it connected to something deeper? This kind of reflection is powerful. It allows you to separate the present from the past. It gives you clarity, and with clarity comes the ability to respond differently. Another important step in inner healing is acceptance. Not acceptance of harmful behavior, but acceptance of your own emotions. It is okay to feel hurt. It is okay to feel anger. These emotions are part of being human. The goal is not to suppress them, but to process them in a healthy way. When you acknowledge your emotions without judgment, they begin to lose their intensity. They move through you instead of staying stuck within you. Forgiveness once again plays a central role here. But now it goes even deeper. It becomes a tool for healing your own heart. When you forgive, you are not saying that what happened was right. You're saying that you no longer want to carry the weight of that pain. This release creates space within you. Space for peace. Space for clarity. Space for growth. There is also a profound connection between love and inner peace. When your heart is filled with anger or resentment, your mind becomes restless. Thoughts repeat. Emotions fluctuate. But when you choose love, when you let go of negativity, something shifts. Your mind becomes calmer. Your thoughts become clearer. Peace is not something you find outside. It is something you create within. The teachings of Jesus Christ often emphasize this inner peace. A peace that is not dependent on circumstances, but rooted in a deeper understanding of life. A peace that remains steady even when situations are challenging. This kind of peace is powerful because it cannot be easily shaken. Another important aspect of this journey is compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Many people are quick to show kindness to others, but harsh toward themselves. They hold on to guilt, regret, and self-criticism. But true transformation requires self-compassion. You must learn to forgive yourself as well. Think about your past mistakes, moments you regret, decisions you wish you could change. Holding on to these only keeps you stuck. But when you choose to learn from them instead of being defined by them, you begin to move forward. You begin to grow. Loving your enemies also teaches you patience. Change does not happen instantly. Healing takes time. There will be moments of progress and moments where old patterns return. This is part of the journey. What matters is consistency. Each time you choose love over anger, you strengthen a new pattern. Each time you respond with understanding instead of reaction, you move closer to the person you want to become. Over time, these small choices create a profound transformation. You become more centered, more grounded, more at peace, and this inner transformation begins to reflect outward. People notice the change in you. They see your calmness in difficult situations, your ability to handle conflict with grace, your willingness to forgive, and sometimes without even realizing it, you become a source of inspiration for others. This is how change spreads, not through force, but through example. As we continue this journey, we will explore the deeper spiritual purpose behind this teaching. Why does loving your enemies matter on a larger scale? How does it connect to meaning, purpose, and a greater vision for life? Because this teaching is not just about personal peace. It is about living a life that reflects something greater, a life rooted in love As we move further into this journey, we now begin to explore a deeper question. Why does loving your enemies matter on a larger spiritual level? Beyond personal peace, beyond relationships, beyond emotional healing, this teaching points towards something greater: purpose. The message of Jesus Christ was never limited to individual transformation. It was a vision for how humanity could live in harmony. At its core, loving your enemies challenges the very foundation of how most people see the world. We are taught to divide good and bad, right and wrong, friend and enemy. These distinctions often shape our identity. They influence how we think, how we act, and how we relate to others. But what if these divisions are part of the problem? What if the idea of enemy itself is something that needs to be redefined? When you begin to see people not as enemies, but as individuals shaped by their experiences, their struggles, and their environment, something shifts within you. Judgment starts to fade. Compassion begins to grow. And with that compassion comes a deeper understanding of life. This is where the teaching becomes spiritual, because it moves beyond external behavior and touches the way you see existence itself. Every major spiritual tradition, in its own way, speaks about unity, the idea that we are all connected, that beneath our differences, there is something fundamentally the same in all of us: a shared humanity, a shared desire for peace, happiness, and meaning. Loving your enemies aligns you with this truth. It reminds you that separation is often an illusion created by fear, misunderstanding, and ego. The ego thrives on division. It wants to be right. It wants to be superior. It wants to protect itself at all costs. And when it feels threatened, it reacts with anger, judgment, and defensiveness. But love operates differently. Love does not need to prove itself. It does not need to dominate. It does not seek to divide, it seeks to connect. When you choose love over ego, you begin to experience life in a new way. You become less focused on winning arguments and more focused on understanding perspectives. You become less concerned with being right and more interested in what is true. This shift brings clarity. It allows you to see beyond surface-level conflicts and recognize deeper patterns. You begin to understand that many conflicts arise not from true opposition, but from miscommunication, fear, and unmet needs. This awareness changes how you engage with the world. You become a peacemaker, not someone who avoids conflict, but someone who approaches it with wisdom and balance. The teachings of Mahatma Gandhi reflect this idea deeply. His belief in nonviolence was not just a strategy, it was a philosophy rooted in the understanding that true change cannot come from force. It must come from transformation. Similarly, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of what he called the beloved community, a vision of society where love and justice coexist, where people are judged not by differences, but by their shared humanity. These visions may seem idealistic, but they are grounded in a powerful truth. Lasting change begins with how we treat one another, and that begins with individuals. With you. Your choices matter more than you may realize. Every time you choose patience over anger, you shift the energy of a situation. Every time you respond with kindness instead of hostility, you create a moment of peace. These moments may seem small, but they add up. They create a ripple effect. and ripples have the power to reach far beyond their starting point. There is also a sense of purpose that comes from living this way. When your actions are guided by love, your life begins to feel more meaningful. You are no longer reacting to situations, you are responding with intention. You become someone who contributes to peace rather than conflict, someone who builds rather than divides. This sense of purpose is deeply fulfilling because it connects you to something greater than yourself. It aligns your actions with values that have lasting impact. But this path also requires courage. It is not always easy to stand for love in a world that often rewards aggression. It is not always easy to remain calm when others are reactive. It is not always easy to forgive when you feel hurt. But it is always powerful, because it sets you apart. It shows that your actions are not controlled by circumstances, but guided by principle. And over time, this consistency builds strength. A quiet, steady strength that does not need recognition, but speaks through your actions. As you continue on this journey, you may begin to notice something profound. You are no longer the same person you were before. Your perspective has shifted. Your reactions have changed. Your inner world has become more peaceful. This is transformation. Not sudden, not dramatic, but steady and real. And it continues to grow with every choice you make. As we move into the next part of this documentary, we will bring everything together. We will explore how to sustain this way of living, how to remain consistent in the face of challenges, and how to make love not just a response, but a foundation for your entire life. Because loving your enemies is not just a lesson, it is a lifelong journey. As we approach the final stages of this journey, we now turn our focus toward one of the most important questions of all. How do we sustain this way of living? It is one thing to feel inspired in a moment, to understand the beauty of loving your enemies, but it is another to live it consistently, day after day, in real-life situations, through challenges, emotions, and unexpected conflicts. This is where the teaching of Jesus Christ becomes not just a message, but a discipline. Consistency is the bridge between understanding and transformation. Without consistency, even the most powerful ideas remain temporary. You may feel motivated today, patient tomorrow, but reactive the next day. This is the natural rhythm of human behavior. But growth happens when you begin to bring awareness into that rhythm. You begin to notice your patterns. You begin to recognize the moments where you tend to react, the situations that trigger you, the people who challenge your patience. And instead of being caught off guard, you prepare yourself. Preparation is a powerful tool. Before entering a situation where you know conflict may arise, you set an intention. You remind yourself today, I will choose patience. Today I will respond with calmness. Today I will practice love, even if it is difficult. This simple act of intention can change how you experience the situation. Another key to sustaining this mindset is developing daily habits that reinforce it. Just as physical strength requires regular exercise, emotional and spiritual strength require regular practice. One such habit is reflection. At the end of each day, take a moment to review your actions. Where did you respond with love? Where did you react with frustration? Not to judge yourself, but to learn. This reflection builds awareness, and awareness leads to growth. Another important habit is gratitude. Gratitude shifts your focus. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, you begin to notice what went right. You appreciate moments of kindness, moments of patience, moments of connection. This positive focus strengthens your ability to live with love. There is also power in surrounding yourself with the right influences. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, the environment you are in, all of these shape your mindset. When you are surrounded by negativity, it becomes harder to maintain a positive outlook. But when you engage with uplifting ideas, supportive people, and meaningful conversations, your mindset becomes stronger. The teachings of Martin Luther King Jr. remind us that the time is always right to do what is right. This is a powerful reminder that every moment is an opportunity. You do not need to wait for the perfect situation. You do not need everything to be calm and peaceful. You can choose love in the middle of chaos, and that choice matters, because consistency is not about being perfect. It is about returning to the path again and again. There will be moments when you lose patience, moments when you react in ways you regret, moments when anger feels stronger than love. These moments are not failures, they are part of the process. What matters is what you do next. Do you hold on to that mistake, or do you learn from it? Do you allow it to define you, or do you use it as a step toward growth? Self-forgiveness becomes essential here. Just as you are learning to forgive others, you must also learn to forgive yourself. Growth requires compassion, not only outward but inward. Another powerful aspect of sustaining this lifestyle is understanding that love is a long-term investment. You may not always see immediate results. You may show kindness and not receive it in return. You may forgive and not receive an apology. You may act with integrity and still face challenges. But love is not about immediate rewards. It is about long-term transformation. Every act of love shapes your character. It strengthens your inner peace. It builds a foundation that cannot be easily shaken. And over time, the results do appear. In your mindset, in your relationships, in your sense of purpose, you begin to experience life with a deeper sense of calm and clarity. You become less affected by negativity. You respond rather than react. And perhaps most importantly, you inspire others not by what you say, but by how you live. This is the quiet power of consistency. It does not demand attention, but it creates impact. As we bring this journey toward its conclusion, we reflect on everything we have explored, from understanding the meaning of love to practicing forgiveness, to healing inner wounds, to finding purpose, and now to sustaining this way of life. Each step builds upon the last. Each choice shapes who you become. And now the message becomes clear. Loving your enemies is not just about changing how you treat others. It is about transforming who you are. It is about becoming someone who carries peace within, regardless of external circumstances. Someone who responds with wisdom instead of impulse. Someone who chooses love, not because it is easy, but because it is right. As this journey comes to an end, we return to where it all began, with a simple yet life-changing message spoken by Jesus Christ: love your enemies. At first it seemed like an impossible idea, a teaching too difficult, too unrealistic for the world we live in. But now, after walking through every layer, understanding, forgiveness, healing, purpose, and consistency, we begin to see it differently. It is not impossible. It is transformational. Because loving your enemies is not about changing the world overnight. It is about changing the way you live in the world.